It's another day, and there is another commit for Duke men's basketball. Mason Gillis announces that he will play college basketball one more season, and this time he'll be playing for the Duke University Blue Devils. Big time get in the transfer portal. We got to break it all down today.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. Today is Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop for everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils, and I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. Be sure to subscribe and follow Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcast. You'll get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it comes out each and every day. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review. On Fridays, we have 5-star Friday shout-outs, and we hope that you can be a part of that by leaving us a 5-star rating. Also, make sure that you subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils on YouTube. You can watch our show each and every day on the YouTube page. So hit that subscribe button, like this video, share it with your friends. Thank you so much for making Locked On Blue Devils your first listen and first watch each and every day. A special shout out to all of our everydayers there who were a part of this Locked On Blue Devils community. Today's show, we got to talk about the new commit for Duke men's basketball. Mason Gillis comes over from Purdue. We'll talk about his addition with our good pal Conor O'Neill from the Devils Illustrated. We'll also talk about Malik Brown, who joined Duke over the weekend. So without further ado, we'll bring him on in. Here is our good pal Conor O'Neill, who joins us here on the program. Conor, thanks for the time as always, man.
My pleasure.
All right, let's get to it. A couple of new commits for Duke, and we'll start with the most recent one, Mason Gillis. When you saw this news, how did you react?
I reacted that I picked a bad time to vacuum my house. I was like 10 minutes late. That's
there
just
you go.
If it gives you an indication of where this was headed, the story on Mason Gillis committing to Duke was written early Sunday morning. So all things
you were just waiting. Yeah.
Yeah. And in full transparency, like I think last year I had one written for would have been Ernest Uday, I believe. So things don't always go that way, but usually when I've got a story written, it's a good indication. But it kind of fits exactly what Duke is looking for. Some toughness, experience. Mason Gillis has been in big games. He's, sometimes I think we get a little silly with the transfer portal and people start freaking out about additions of guys that might not be good fits or might not be all that great. They're just attractive because fans look at a roster and see that they've got 6 guys and think that they're not going to be able to field a team. But I think Mason Gillis does not sound any of those alarm bells. Like, I think he's a good fit for what Duke needs to have next year. And that is 18 to 24 minutes a game, gritty, gluey type of player who's going to hit a couple threes.
Yeah, a big, tough player for the Duke basketball team. A lot of experience, and I think that's a big reason why he's going to fit in so well. And I'm glad you mentioned that part about, look, the numbers might be slim after everybody exits the team to enter the transfer portal. You're waiting for some guys to come in, but not everybody can play that joins the team. Not everybody's going to be scoring tons and tons of points. Not everybody's going to be averaging 15, 20 minutes a game, but the guys that do need to make an impact, and I certainly think that Mason Gillis could be one of those guys. The experience that he brings, just how big will that be for this Duke team that's going to have a lot of really talented freshmen coming in?
It's huge. Like you're only looking, we're judging Duke by the prism of what they looked like this past year, and getting the Elite Eight was great. I'm not discounting that, but the team had flaws. Like the 3 wins in the NCAA tournament did not erase the fact that Duke was a team that for a lot of the season felt like they left meat on the bone, and they felt like they had only kind of scratched the surface of what their potential could be. You typically don't get teams that leave meat on the bone and only scratch the surface of potential when you have older players that are understanding of their roles. Those are guys that are going to leave it all out there. And I don't think this year's Duke team had full buy-in from the entire roster of guys that would leave everything on the court. I think that's safe to say, right? I think we saw that not every single game. There were games that they went out and everybody, they played really well together. But there were other games that they didn't. And the 2 that come to mind immediately are the 2 that made the most throughout the whole season. Like the Carolina games, they left plays on the court in both of those games. So I think with Mason Gillis, with bringing in the experience that he comes in with, you're not eliminating that possibility entirely, but you're at least narrowing the chances that it happens.
Tons of experience joining the Duke basketball team out of the transfer portal, and they're not done yet. There are still scholarships left to be filled. It'll be interesting to see what guys kind of enter into the mix. Malik Brown also recently committed, so we've got to have thoughts on him and a little bit more of this Mason Gillis conversation after we take our first time out with our good friend Conor O'Neill here from Devils Illustrated. So we'll be back here in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. These days we know how much playoff time means to all of us in the NBA and the NHL in particular. How about some of the games that we saw last night? In hockey, the Carolina Hurricanes down 3, score 5 unanswered to win against the Islanders. They've got a 2-0 lead. And how about that last-minute game-winning shot at the buzzer for Jamal Murray and the Denver Nuggets? Baseball season is also in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on all of these exciting games. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Just go ahead and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel is the official sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils, and FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Our show today is also brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the absolute best, and it's now an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guaranteed, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. They've got last-minute deals where you could save up to 60% off buying last-minute seats for sports, concerts, comedy, theater events, and more. They're all-in prices with the feature that shows you the total upfront, so you have no surprise fees once you get to checkout. And also the lowest price guaranteed on Gametime, where they've got the lowest price out there, or Gametime will credit you 110% the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Here we go. On today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, Conor O'Neill is here from Devils Illustrated. We're talking about Mason Gillis joining the Brotherhood from Purdue. He comes over. He's got his COVID year of eligibility left to go. Duke could have had Jeremy Roach in this spot. Instead, it's Mason Gillis. They are not the same type of basketball players. Tell us a little bit why that is. What type of basketball player is Mason Gillis? How can he fit into this team, Conor? We've talked about the age and a whole lot, but what does he actually do out there on the floor?
Makes threes. That's one of the main things you look at with all these transfers is their 3-point percentage. And it's funny that we nitpick over a guy who makes 33% is kind of a good shooter and a guy who might make 39% is a really good shooter. It's like
not that much of a difference. Yeah, it's 6%.
That's making 2 more out of every 33s.
Yes.
It's ridiculous. But Mason Gillis is a lot better than 39. He was 46.8% for Purdue. I tend to think that is not going to translate at Duke. I think it's really easy to make threes when Zach Edey is in the post and you're getting kickouts off of doubles of the 2-time unanimous player of the year in the country. Like, I don't see it. People should not expect Mason Gillis to come in and make almost half of his threes. I don't think that's a realistic chance. I do think on the defensive end is where you'll see more of his impact. I think you'll see a guy that, like, one of the things that we've learned about John Shire and Jay Lucas, the defensive coordinator for Duke, is they like to be able to switch. Like, they want to be able to switch a lot on pick and rolls. And Mason Gillis is 6'6", 220. He's fleet of foot enough to stay out there on a guard. He's also big and strong enough to stay inside on a center if he gets switched onto him or somebody like that. Think it's hard to remember who's on whose team, and I know Armando Bacot is gone from Carolina, but whoever's in the post for Carolina, I think it wouldn't be. It's still a mismatch, but it wouldn't be that much of a mismatch. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
You're not losing too much when you put Mason Gillis into switches, and I think we've seen enough from Cooper Flagg before he plays a college game that we know he's going to be switching all over the place. So it's a defensive upgrade is where I think you look more and don't get hung up on whether if Mason Gillis only makes like 38% of his threes, then don't cry about him not being the player that he was kind of promised or guaranteed to be at this time. Now, I'm sure that'll be forgotten in 8 months because we don't remember anything about what gets said now. But I kind of hope that people recalibrate expectations and don't just think they're getting a 45% 3-point shooter. And it's that simple and it's that translatable.
But if that happens, that's a big bonus. It's a big win for the Duke basketball team. We'll certainly take it. Of course, Gillis, we've mentioned a lot of the experience that he's had over 4 years playing for Purdue, playing in the national championship game, most recently here against UConn. That also means that a few seasons ago, he was a part of a Purdue team that was a 1 seed and only the second ever team to lose to a 16 seed when Fairleigh Dickinson knocked off Purdue in that one. So he's got NCAA tournament experience where a lot of these young Blue Devils will not. And ultimately, that's where the Duke basketball team is trying to go. So a gritty player being added to the fold for the Duke basketball team, much like the other commit that Duke has picked up in the last 4 or 5 days. And over the weekend, we learned that Malik Brown, fresh off his visit to Durham, to Duke at the end of last week, decides he's going to transfer within the conference. He's going from Syracuse over to Duke now.
Yeah, I think there's been 6 intra-conference transfers so far, maybe 7.
That number's probably going to keep going up, as we saw last year and again this year already.
Yeah, I mean, a sidebar to that is just like prepare yourself for the first Carolina to Duke transfer or vice versa. When you have guys, Aiden Holloway went from Auburn to Alabama. I'm sure you're very familiar with that.
No doubt.
And we had the name escapes me, but somebody just went from Ohio State to Michigan.
Right.
So there's no illusions of loyalty here. The funny thing I saw about Malik Brown was he scored his career high in Durham this year. He had 26 at Cameron. Can't wait to ask him about, like, well, clearly you just wanted to come to Duke because Cameron's fit your eye.
Yeah.
Like that was
it was his audition. He showed out in front of the staff there. Yeah.
Right. But no, it's another one that you strike a lot of the same chords that you strike with talking about Mason Gillis, with toughness, defensive intensity, and versatility. you wind up kind of saying that Duke didn't add two of the same player, but they added two similar players in what they'll bring to the table. And it's experience, it's toughness. They're both guys that you don't have to run a ton of actions for them. Like, that's the whole thing with building a team around Cooper Flagg. You're not going to get the guy in the portal who's looking to get 12 shots a game. You just that's what makes it a little bit more of a narrow recruiting process for Duke in the transfer portal, because there's two things that sell in the portal, and it's literal currency and then minutes and usage. And it's really hard to sell guys on minutes and usage when they have the same capability as you or I to look at Duke's signing class and see number one player, projected lottery pick, and come on, Malawak, and then two or three other 4-5 stars, one or two other 4-star. I can't remember what our star rankings are these days, but talent on talent on talent. Your typical grinder who's spent 3 years somewhere else or 4 years somewhere else is going to see that and think, well, there's no room for me on this roster. I'm going to go somewhere where I can see a clear avenue to time. So where I'm going with that, Mason Gillis and Malik Brown both. You don't have to involve them in every single set, every single play. They can go get their own offense on offensive rebounds. Malik Brown was an all-ACC defensive player. What is all ACC, all defense team, or however that's worded. He's going to be really good on the defensive end for Duke, and that's where they need him to be really good.
Yeah. Active rebounder, 7 rebounds a game this past season, 9.5 points, 70% shooting from the floor, 72% from the free throw line. We've got some of those numbers up on the screen if you're watching with us here on YouTube, and a level of toughness as well that we've been talking about for both of these guys. 2 years of experience for Malik Brown, and you mentioned kind of the front court there that Duke's got coming in. I think the experience in the front court is also going to mean a whole lot for this Duke team. It's obvious Flagg and Malawak are going to be the stars, and rightfully so. They deserve to be, but there is absolutely a role for Malik Brown on this team, not only in games, but also like in practice settings, trying to get the rest of these Duke freshmen ready to go for the college basketball game.
Yeah, that's where there's always going to be such a steep learning curve, and it's going to be steeper when you're dealing with bringing in 17 and 18-year-olds than it is even for teams that rebuild through the portal. Most of them are bringing in guys that have been in college practices for 2, 3, 4 years. So Duke is always they're still fighting that type of an uphill climb when it comes to what you're talking about with team building and through practices, but adding experienced guys that have been through it, that's going to accelerate your curve. That's going to, let these guys know where they need to be over the summer months and into the preseason. And it's, of course, Malik Brown was important because without him, Duke wasn't even going to be able to run 5-on-5 with scholarship players.
That helps.
Yeah. No, it's fun to joke about people thinking that my favorite thing at this time of year. Are we even going to be able to field a team?
Yeah. We've seen a lot of that over the last few days. So hopefully these recent commitments.
Your team's going to be playing in the Ice Cube 3-on-3 league.
Yeah. Well, we've got 2 new commits for Duke that we're pretty excited about, in Mason Gillis and Malik Brown. But what's next? Because to your point, Conor, there are some still open spots left. And while we may be able to play 5-on-5 now, I think we want some reserves to be a part of these practice and scrimmage settings. So let's talk a little bit about what's coming up next for this Duke basketball team. And we'll have that part of our conversation when we come back here on this episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Monopoly Go. We've all been there before, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime, and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure how you or your team can pull out a win. But that's when you got to dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, it's time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right, the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on the countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put your game face on, and download Monopoly Go. Monopoly Go, that is, for free on the App Store or Google Play. Monopoly Go is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Last few moments here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside my pal Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated. Tell us about your website, Conor. What all do you have going on?
Yeah, it's buzzing right now. There's transfer portal stories up. It's duke.rivals.com. Where you'll really want to be is Devil Insider. That's where we've got a thread for roster construction that is constantly updating with who Duke is looking at, who's Duke's already brought in. The first post on there has a nice rundown of everybody who's going to be on the team next year. Trying to update it as often as I can with a look of like the depth chart, basically. And that's, look, I can point you in the right direction, and I can tell you that's where to go, and you've got to go there. So hopefully people check it out.
Yeah, go join the community. It's awesome stuff over there at Devils Illustrated. So with that being said, you look at this depth chart, you look at this roster, and people look at the open scholarships and are asking, well, what's next? Where does Duke kind of go from here? We've seen kind of back-to-back days almost with commitments. Let's get another one here soon. But who in the world could that be, Conor? What does it look like on that front?
Yeah, I will pump the brakes on you, JJ, right now, because I don't think they're going to get a commit in the next, 48 hours.
Yeah.
It's going to be a bit. It is, in all likelihood, the next commit is going to be a guard. Like, they need an experienced guard. You don't want to go into the season. I know Tyrese Proctor's done 2 years of college, but you just want some more stability there. Caleb Foster played almost a full season. He played 27 of 36 games. And then you've got freshmen behind them. And you've got freshmen that I would pencil in Isaiah Evans, Con Newpel, and Darren Harris all in kind of this same amorphous blob of they're all able to give you minutes at the 2 position and the 3 position. I don't know if any of them can play the 1. So you're looking at your 2 point guards are going to be your starting guards in all likelihood. And then you might have Cooper Flagg run some point forward, but you want to have another point guard that you can bring off the bench. And I think that's where Duke is going to target. You're going to see them bring in this might be a little painful, a Jeremy Roach type, somebody who has ball handling experience initiating offense and getting a team into a half court set, but can also move off the ball and score off the ball and doesn't need the ball in their hands to be effective. That's really kind of the sweet spot for Duke. It's going to be tough to find. As I said, when talking about the forwards, there is a narrow lane for Duke recruiting as long as they're bringing in a 6-player class that's number 1 in the country and has these transformative stars coming into the program. But those players do exist. I think the last count I saw was over 1,700 players in the transfer portal. You're going to be able to find a couple that fits a role.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to be able to find some guys that fit what you're looking for. And that's part of, I think, to backtrack again a little bit, I think some of the consternation before the transfers were added was we heard last year about Duke trying to get transfers and they couldn't get them. So I think adding 2 guys as quickly as they did, Malik Brown commits within 24 hours of news that Sean Stewart's going into the portal. I think that I think we've solved the mystery of, well, can Duke recruit in the transfer portal? Yes, they can. They weren't able to get it done last year when they were looking for a 5. But 2 forwards on board now that both bring experience and toughness. And I think you'll see a guard that brings a little bit of the same things along with ball handling.
Yeah. Knocking down shots from the outside is obviously something we love out of that guard spot, but a little help there on point with Foster and Proctor, as you said, I think would be big too.
You'll have shooting. Like I was always skeptical because it felt like for a good 5 years there, everybody that Duke brought in that was billed as the best thing this guy does is shoot was kind of underwhelming. And then they brought in Jared McCain. And so
you kind of changed that.
I've kind of reimagined my expectations in that regard when it comes to like Isaiah Evans can shoot. He's a volume shooter, so he's going to miss some and he's going to miss in bunches, but he's also going to make in bunches. Like Con Newpel can shoot. He is a really good shooter. Darren Harris really was impressive in high school season. So these guys are coming in with good reputations as shooters.
I can't wait to see it all come together and see what these next few days kind of look like in terms of visits possibly being lined up for Duke, who they're going to be rumored to. And there's always still a little bit of the intrigue. Duke players entered the transfer portal. Where are they going to end up? What's next for a lot of those guys? So we've seen Mark Mitchell over at Missouri. We've seen the Jeremy Roach commitment to Baylor. But Conor, there are still a lot of guys that's just going to be interesting to see what's life like after Duke. Where do you get your next basketball playing opportunity?
Yeah, I'm always curious how much people actually care about that. I can tell you Jalen Blake's it's sounding like has interest in Davidson and Davidson has interest in him. I think TJ Power has some ACC interest. I'll leave that one open-ended. Yeah.
We'll see where it all goes. And, of course, we know where to go to see all of those updates over at Devils Illustrated, Duke.Rivals.com. All right, I'd be remiss if I didn't get you out of here with one football question. You did spend a little bit of time on Saturday over at Wallace Wade. You got to see a spring game. Spring games are losing their definitions over the years with what we actually see on the field that takes place. But Duke played a little football on Saturday at Wallace Wade. What were some of the bigger things that you saw or noticed? And Malik Murphy is big, so I'm going to take that off the table for you because, wow, watching him kind of fully suited up in that Duke uniform. The dude's massive.
I mean, I'm going to keep it with Malik Murphy. It was the first time that we got to talk to him.
Okay.
He is an impressive person, interview, quote, that type of thing. Like direct answers, look people in their eyes when he's answering them, took pauses to look for the right words, which I was always told when you're asking a question, it's okay to do. He just, his aura might be a corny word, but I'll use it here. His aura is that of a big time Division I quarterback. You can't help but come away from a 7-minute interview or watching him throw a football for 2 hours and not be impressed with how he carries himself and his ability. So that's my main takeaway. I'm actually working on a column that'll be up hopefully later today on Devils Illustrated about him.
Go check it out. It's going to be awesome. Really excited for the Duke football season coming up. Conor, as always, I appreciate the time. Thank you for stopping by here on the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that's Conor O'Neill here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Give him a follow on X at Conor O'Neill_DI. That's going to do it for our show here today. As always, go Duke. We'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.